Welcome to today's live learning session from United Methodist Communications, Publicity for Local Churches. My name is Crystal Cavanis, and I'm here with my colleague Brenda Smotherman. We are Senior Public Relations Specialist at United Methodist Communications, and we're happy to be with you today.
No matter if you're new to publicity or you're a seasoned communicator, we hope the following tips will help you to make the greatest impact for your church.
Let's get started.
Before you start any public relations efforts, it's important to decide whether you should do publicity or not. To determine if your story is newsworthy, ask yourself if it's the first of its kind, is it unique, or does it have a broad appeal to the community? Although humbling, it's important to remember that just because something is important to you and your church, it might not mean that media identifies it as an interest to the majority of your audience. Although always try to look at news from the media person's eyes, and better yet, their audiences. Outside of just telling your story, you need something that you know that they need and that will benefit them. Some examples of some newsworthy stories that you might have could be that you have a new pastor taking the helm, or you've hit a huge mile marker anniversary or a big benchmark in an outreach result. Maybe you're hosting a well-known personality for a concert or speaking event, and it's open to the public. You're throwing a fall festival that's free and open to the community where you'll have bouncy houses, candy, and more. Perhaps you're organizing a flood recovery mission trip and welcoming the community to join you. You're providing a Christmas toy store for the less fortunate and asking the community to offer donations. Or you have a big fundraiser event that's benefiting someone in the community. Especially in the case of the fundraiser example, know that sometimes first UMC is not the hero, but rather you come along for the ride. Tell the story of the person you're helping when you're promoting the fundraiser, but always tie things back to your church. Also, consider that media will be interested in having resources proactively made available when possible. When pulling together your materials, be sure that you are able to answer the following questions. Who is benefiting from your event, and who, if they will be able to speak and do interviews on your behalf? If the answer is no, know that media's interest may waver as they like to share the story of how your efforts are affecting people. Do you have statistics available to add into the mix? Although not necessary, this can add credibility to why your information is needed. For example, sharing statistics about hunger in your area when you're promoting your church's new food pantry. Can you list the types of visuals that can be captured at your event? TV will want to shoot activity, and print and online will want to know what kind of photo opportunities you can anticipate. Consider including these details in an intro note within your pitch or press release email to help them see how they can paint the picture of your story for their audience. Before moving forward, make sure that you have covered the 5 W's. That's who is your story about, what is happening, where is it located, when will it take place, and why is it important. Again, that's who, what, where, when, and why. But now, who do you share this information with?
Well, once you've determined that your event needs publicity, a second step is to define your audience. Is your audience internal or external? Who needs to know about your event? People in your congregation only, or folks in the community? Does your event require internal publicity or external publicity? If you decide that your audience is internal, that is, only people within your church, then you will focus on internal communications channels only. So what are your internal communications channels? Church bulletins, your church website, social media such as a private Facebook group that is used to inform your congregation of events. You may also want to make an announcement from the pulpit or have the event publicized on a screen before and after your worship services. You also may choose to create a Facebook event to invite people in your church to RSVP. A lot of events, however, are intended to give exposure to your church and reach out into the community. So you will want to use all of the internal communications channels and add to that external communication. External publicity incorporates using media outlets, including newspapers, television and radio stations, and online media outlets. Depending on your event, many media outlets have calendar listings and you can typically send your information to these places through online forms or to specific emails. Also, you'll want to create a press release, which gives you the opportunity to tell your story in your own way. We'll talk more about that next. As you reach out to media, keep in mind that the larger markets will have more competition, so you'll have to work smarter to grab the attention of those media outlets. However, identifying the right media contact and getting your story to them in a relevant and compelling way is your objective when seeking publicity for an external audience.
Now that you've thought through the newsworthiness of your message and know your audience, it's time to start crafting your press release. If you registered to attend this webinar, you'll be receiving an email later this afternoon that includes a press release example that you can use as a template or a layout guide. But even with a template, it's essential that you understand the key elements of a press release in order to start filling in your personal document. Here are some basics to keep in mind. Make sure to include your church logo, your press contact information, your city and state, the send date, and a brief paragraph about your church. Again, see the provided template in your email for more guidance. Then you'll focus on your headline. Think of the eye-catching statements that you see on newspapers or online that make you click to read the story. You want that same type of thing for your release. Write a brief headline that is clear and to the point, yet conveys why the story is interesting and important. Then you'll head into your intro paragraph. Make sure that your main message, including your angle or hook, is contained here and that it shares, yep, you guessed it, those 5 W's. Who, what, where, when, why. Meaning that this paragraph should include you as the host, what the event is, the purpose, time, cost, location, and who it benefits. Realize that in the busyness of life, a reporter may only read this paragraph. So make it count. Unlike a box of Cracker Jack where you'll dig into the bottom to find the prize, a press release isn't afforded that patience. Grab their attention so that they'll want to learn more. Remember that you are one in many releases that they'll receive this week, so you need to stand out for all the right reasons. Then you'll head into crafting your body paragraphs. This will be about 2 or 5 paragraphs that share the rest of your story that are presented with a level of importance being first and going down. It's in this section that you might consider giving a voice to your press release by offering a quote or two, perhaps from your pastor, an event coordinator, or if possible, a testimonial from a past attendee or the person being impacted. You may opt for these to be standalone paragraphs or work them into the mix of another paragraph. Be sure to get approval of the person quoted to ensure that they're comfortable with their statement in the context of the release and with any edits you may have made. Keep quotes simple and include the person's name, title, and if applicable, their organization, so that people can recognize their authority and know why they're speaking on behalf of your story. Some other things to keep in mind: keep the content to 1 page and no more than 400 words if at all possible. Review the content to ensure that you've addressed the 5 W's: the who, the what, where, when, and why. If not, edit the wording until it does. Always do spelling and grammar checks before finalizing your press release. If possible, have another person proofread it for you before you finalize it, like I do with Crystal.
So you've written your press release and it's time to share it with the world. To whom do you send it and how? Some churches, particularly larger ones, may utilize an email marketing service such as MailChimp or Constant Contact. For the majority of churches, however, you'll be sending your press releases out through your church email account. If you have a general church email, I suggest using that versus using a personal email. The first rule is do not attach your press release to the email. Because you may be an unknown sender, the email could be sorted into a spam folder and never make it to its desired recipient. Also, many companies don't allow staff to open attachments from unknown senders. Instead of attaching your press release to the email, paste your press release into the body of the email. By doing some research online, you can usually find the correct email addresses to which to send press releases. Most media outlets will have contact us information at the website. Now, many times this information can be found by scrolling all the way to the bottom of the site. But if you cannot find an email address, don't be shy about calling the media outlet and asking where press releases can be sent. Media outlets want to know what's happening in the community, so you're not bothering anyone by sending your information. The next part of press release distribution concerns timing. TV news and daily newspapers and radio stations also won't need the information as far in advance as a monthly community publication, for example. A good rule of thumb is to distribute your press release 10 days in advance of your event if you're seeking day of coverage. If you want advance coverage, for example, you want to help promote your event to the public to sell tickets, you'll want to send it out approximately 4 weeks in advance. Follow-up is also important. Media outlets receive a lot of press releases, so you'll want to follow up to make sure the information was received and to ask if more information is needed. The way to get the best response is to call. Sending an email to ask if someone received the information and/or plans to use it almost never results in a reply. Also, thinking that you've sent it and you'll hear back if somebody plans to cover it typically doesn't yield the results you want either. Follow-up calls are important to bring your event to the attention of the reporter or editor. You're also probably going to want to send your press release to your district office, and if the news is big enough, to the conference communicator for your annual conference.
The more personalized and earnest you can make your outreach, the better your chances to get your story covered. When dealing with local media, you have the advantage of having a smaller pool of people with which to work that affords you more time to get to know them. Here's some tips for how to accomplish this. Watch their social media posts to see what they're working on to see when you have a good fit for them. Make a point to view a channel's various newscasts or listen to radio stations' drive time shows to get a feel for their styles and their interests. Read articles to see what a reporter covered. Other things to keep in mind that lets media know you're thinking about their needs. Consider calendar seasons and national and fun holidays that you might tie your news to that gives you a timely reason to cover you. For example, May is National Foster Care Month, and our team is reaching out about a ministry operated by United Methodist that helps foster children. But if that timing doesn't work for them, the dad in the story could be a great Father's Day feature too. Give media timely things, but options too. Or perhaps you can tie your story to a trend to play off of audience interests. Invite media to your community events, not just for garnering coverage, but to build rapport as they're also a part of your community. When afforded the opportunity, meet face to face, even just to introduce yourself. Do it. The more you familiarize yourself with these media contexts, the more personal you can make your outreach. For instance, you might recall that someone's online bio stated that they like horses, and your event includes free pony rides. Make the most of that knowledge when reaching out to them. When you go to send a press release or media alert, you can always start with an intro paragraph that personalizes things to them. This helps capture their interests. The more personal, typically, the more interest you'll pique. The day of your event arrives, you've covered your bases to get the word out to your church members, to your community. You've written and serviced your press releases and taken advantage of other outreach methods, such as event calendars. And you may think and perhaps hope that your job is finished. However, for a publicity person, the day of the event is just as busy or busier as the days leading up to it. You'll want to post reminders to all of your social media accounts as early as possible that day. For most people, that means your church's public Facebook page and the internal private Facebook group page if you have one. If you have active Instagram and Twitter accounts, then make sure that they also reflect a day of announcement. At some point that morning, call the news desk of the local TV stations. These phone numbers are found on the station's websites. When you call, make sure you have already distributed your press release to them earlier, and as we mentioned, up to 10 days or a week earlier for TV news and radio. You can quickly identify yourself and say that you're following up on a press release sent about an event that day at First United Methodist Church, and then ask, is the event on your schedule today to be covered?
Most news stations keep a list of what's happening all over town, and then they prioritize and cover events as they can. Keep in mind that a TV news editor may say, yes, we'll be there, and then on the way to your event, a big fire breaks out downtown and the news crew is redirected. For TV news especially, never count on the coverage until you see the crew on site, and then I don't count it as a win until I see the segment on the news later that day. Anything can happen, and that great interview that your pastor gave the reporter may get bumped because of breaking news. Also, when you call the news desk, the news editor may ask you to rescind your press release. It's a good idea to have the release ready to email immediately. I usually email it while I'm on the phone so that I can verify that the editor received it. Once you've made your calls to the TV and radio news desk, you can prepare for what happens once the event gets underway. If you've hired a photographer, I recommend providing a shot list. This is a list of photos that you want to tell the story of the event. Think about all the ways and places you may use the photos and who may want to be included in them. Even if you don't hire a photographer and the photographer is you, thinking through a shot list is a good idea. Having this list may prevent you from forgetting to grab photos of the sponsor signage or some other photos that are necessary, but which aren't necessarily going to be used for post-event publicity. Think about all of the must-haves, the group shots, the key moments. And although you'll be working from a shot list, don't forget candids and moments that pop up unexpectedly that you'll want to capture. When you're getting photos, make sure you get both vertical and horizontal shots. You'll use vertical mainly for social media and horizontal for your website. Also, if you take video, you may want to capture both vertical and horizontal video for the same reasons. Horizontal video can be captured and possibly sent to news stations after your event, and horizontal photos may be captioned and sent to your local papers or websites. Facebook Live events are a great way to drive traffic to an event, especially one that lasts for a few hours. If you do a Facebook Live event, make sure that you do it early on in your event so that people will see it and have time to get there. As an aside about getting permissions, it is recommended that you get permissions to video or photograph and use videos and photographs, especially for anyone under 18 years old. You'll want to have these releases on hand so they can be signed. Posting a crowd video photo release form prominently throughout your event is another way to protect yourself and your church. A sample crowd release form template can be found online, and it also will be provided at the end of this live learning session. Also, it's important to note that some events, such as races or events where tickets are sold, will include a release form as part of the ticketing process. So the event is officially over, all of your guests have left, the tables and chairs are put away, and the trash has been taken out. Your job is finally over too, right? Well, not so fast. As the person in charge of publicity, you'll want to share the news of how fabulous your event was to the world. Now is the time to post photos and or video to your social media sites, and you may also want to service your best photo with caption to select media. By doing some research, you can determine which media outlets tend to publish post-event photos. Occasionally, a news station will agree to take your event footage to air or post on its website. This is a situation that will need to be discussed in advance, however. You definitely do not want to send unsolicited video to a news station presuming that the producers will use it. However, if you've had the conversation and the station agrees to receive the footage, delivering the video in a timely manner is a priority. Video files frequently are large, so depending on the file size, video can be delivered to an email address via Dropbox or another delivery method for large files. For many publicity folks, writing thank you notes to sponsors and other key players is part of your job. If this is yours, including a photo from the event, especially one featuring the sponsor, is a thoughtful memento. Of course, you'll want to make note of that on your photography shot list so that it doesn't get forgotten. Well, that's it for the information we wanted to share with you, and we hope it's been helpful. Congratulations on your role in handling publicity for your church. We believe it's the best and most important job because you get to tell the story of your church and the impact it's having in your community through events and other happenings.
Whew. That was a lot of information, but we know that some of you had some questions. We'll do our best to work through those and do as many as possible in our time remaining. And if we don't get to your question, it might just end up in a future live learning session. So let's jump in.
I see here, before we answer some questions that are specific to publicity, we had a lot of questions about social media today. We want to direct you to some on-demand webinars that we have that are specific to social media. You can find those at umcom.org/webinars. So thanks for writing in about those, and I think you'll find all the information you need about those webinars. So here's a great question. Is publicity expensive? Well, that's the best news of all. Publicity is free. And for a lot of churches that don't have budgets, this is a way that you can tell your story, get the information out without spending a lot of money on advertising, because all of these publicity outreach methods that we talked about today, they cost nothing.
But the one thing that you will want to keep in mind is that time is precious and that these things do take time. So as far as a cost is concerned, you have to kind of factor that in depending on what other activities you might have going on at the church. But it's definitely well worth your time and can have a great impact for your church.
Here's another question. I'm looking for ways to promote a new senior pastor coming to our church and community. That's a really great opportunity to talk about your church and do some publicity. The things that we talked about today as far as putting a press release together, talking about your senior pastor, maybe some unique opportunities the senior pastor is going to bring to the church. That's a wonderful way to promote that person. Some other things you may want to think about with a senior pastor is having that person offer a guest editorial. If your local paper has a faith page, a lot of times they will take a guest columnist. So that may be a good opportunity to get some publicity for your senior pastor and also for your church.
And you could even do an event to kind of welcome them or have a special Sunday where you're making sure that it's something that you're inviting people to. It offers that little bit of timeliness that we talked about.
Great. Here's another one. I have a church extension ministry, free preventative health screenings and education clinic within a church building. Do the same PR principles apply? Well, that sounds like an amazing ministry, and absolutely. This is information that you would want to get out. You would want people to, it sounds like it's, these screenings, I'm just guessing they would be open to the public, and you want to be able to tell that story. There would probably be some privacy issues regarding the people that you serve, but you may be able to work with that, maybe work around that a little bit to get some information about the kinds of people you have served and some results. If you're able to show some results from what that ministry is doing, then it's a really great opportunity to lift that up and in the process invite other people to come into that ministry. How do you publicize your church when there's no local newspaper or TV station and you can't afford mass mailings? That's very likely, especially in some smaller rural communities, that might be your scenario. And I think probably online and social media is going to be your best bet there. Yeah. If you have a church Facebook page, especially an outward-facing one, which would be a public page, you can promote all of your events there. Some communities have community pages, so I would do a little bit of research and find out if that's true for your area.
Another thing is, you were saying those community pages, it might even be groups that are selling things like yard sales. Like I know my neighborhood has one of those, and so just a way of be able to do a post, maybe make up a little meme or a shareable image that talks about it, that you can share it there. Also, another thing that you could think about is, are there local retailers maybe in the area that you have connections with? Maybe they would be willing to share it on their Facebook page or something on their website. So just always keep in mind that media doesn't always have to be the traditional media media that you're thinking of. It can sometimes just be those people that are influencers that are willing to put their voice out there on your behalf for their audiences.
We have a couple of questions that are similar about targeting a particular audience, and someone said, how do I target publicity for a young family group? And when you get to this, it just takes some research, find out if there are some publications that are specific to your audience group. Maybe for this young family group, perhaps there's parenting publications. It also may mean that you tailor your press release to, if you want to lift up those things that you think would be of interest particularly to your particular audience. The same event could possibly have 2 or 3 different leads, honestly, depending on who you're targeting. So it may just mean that you do a little bit of research to see if there's some publications that are specific to those audiences, and then also might mean that you kind of mix up your lead a little bit to include those items that are of interest to those folks.
Yeah, and honestly, when you are able to go after those niche markets, you are actually targeting more of a base of who's going to be interested in your event, as opposed to doing like this, the shotgun approach where you're kind of covering everybody. Yeah, you want to be able to do that larger outreach, but if you know that this is a family event, a parenting event, go after those people that are going to be most interested and most to resonate with that message, and you're going to have better results.
Here's someone has said, have you had any luck with online community calendars? We referenced them quite a bit during this session, and we have. If you need to check the timing, if you get on them quickly enough. If it's we haven't really found a reason why it wouldn't be. They would not list them. They're looking for information. You have information, they're looking for information, so it's a good fit. So the only thing is you might, if you go if your event's tomorrow, you probably won't get on the online calendar because they need more time than that. But yeah, I think that's a great way for free publicity.
And a lot of those calendars, when you look at them, if they have a longer lead time, they'll let you know that typically. So you can look and see, oh, I can still get this in, or it's going to take 3 days for this to get approval. I'm not going to worry about it. So just, pick your battles, but also go after things. It's not, you never know who's going to be looking at that website or that newspaper or wherever. So always think that who are you going to be speaking with, and speak to that one person.
We've got a few questions about PR volunteers. We know in a church setting, most of the time it's a volunteer staff, a volunteer group or team. How do you enlist volunteers? What kinds of roles do they play? Is it best that there's one person or several people? Do you want to have any thoughts on that?
I would say just pick what works the best for you. Sometimes you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, but you also want to be able to have enough people to get what you need to do done without anybody feeling too taxed. So what I would really encourage you to do is create a message map of sorts, where you would go through and create these are the messages that we want to share. These are the main points we need to hit, and make sure, no matter if your team is going to be 2 people or 5 people or what have you, that everyone is aware of what those points are. Because the more people you can add in, if everybody's not on that same page, your message can get diluted, and so you want to make sure that everybody stays on message.
We have a few people asking about connecting with local media and how to have good relationships with local media. The people in the media have a job to do, just like you have a job to do. They want to publicize the news, and you want them to publicize your news. You don't want to be, they don't necessarily have to become your best friends, but especially if your media markets are small, if you're in a small media market, I think Brenda alluded earlier, invite them to some of your events, start getting to know them, and you can get to a place where you can, perhaps you get to a place where you can pick up the phone and you can just call and say, hey, we've got a really cool thing happening. Is this something that interests you? So, treat it with professionalism and respect. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say, one thing that I will say is make sure that you have integrity with no matter what you're sending out, whether it's a media alert or a caption. media need to know that they can trust you. So if you build a level of trust with them where they know that you're trying as best you can to pay attention to what you know that they cover and that might be of interest to them, and that you're always going to present it in a professional way, that's going to go a long way for them opening up your emails in the future. So always just make sure that your word means something. And as Christians, I would hope that does mean something, but just something to keep in mind as you look at things from a business standpoint.
So someone has asked, is the newspaper truly a dead medium? Well, I don't think so. It's you have a toolbox, and the newspaper is one of the tools in your toolbox. So I wouldn't just write it off, even if the newspaper in your town is losing subscribers, or maybe it isn't as vibrant as it used to be. They're still readers. Mm-hmm. And there isn't a single media tool, if you will, that is going to cover everything. So, include it. Do not just dismiss it because of perhaps a trend that you're seeing and where it's newspapers aren't as, perhaps they're not as vibrant as they once were in your area, because it certainly is a place where you can get information out. And what the really cool thing about newspapers is it's long. A lot of times it's long form, and where you have TV might give you 30 seconds. If you have a newspaper reporter come out, you possibly might get a couple of photos. You'll get a much longer story. So it's a great outlet for getting to tell even more of your story.
And another thing that I would have you keep in mind is it's really important that, again, that things are professional and that grammar and spelling are all correct in your presentations. As with those slimmer employee bases, and they might not have the staff to cover as much as they once did. They're still valid, and they still need to be able to share the information about the community. But whenever you're able to come alongside them and help them and provide them with tools that they don't even have to worry about editing, sometimes they'll just run your press release. So that's another reason why you just really need to make sure that it's top-notch and that you're always being professional in all of your outreach.
Here's a really good question. What about larger urban areas? Any suggestions for making connections? It's true, the larger media markets are going to be more complicated, but you have more options, but you also have to cut through more of the landscape of what's out there and that's competing for the attention of the news outlets. One of the things that we do is that we check out reporter profiles. We aren't stalking reporters, but we're learning about reporters, and we try to understand what they write about, what's of interest to them, what they've recently written about. Sometimes I think Brenda talked about this earlier, on social media, reporters will talk about what they're covering, and we try to find a way to connect with them that way. So connecting with a reporter, making those connections in a larger media market is definitely more challenging. It can be done, and it requires a little more work, but it's also the payoff is bigger because it is a larger media market, so it's worth it. It just takes a little more time and takes maybe being a little more clever and unique in how you approach it.
And again, don't discredit the ability of having those face-to-face opportunities. So if you know that a media outlet has said that they're doing a remote at the women's show that's in town, or or maybe they're just doing the radio station has a remote that's at a local car wash. Go out if you're in the area and just say hello. Say that you appreciate what they do. And you never know, you might be able to strike up some opportunities to talk about something that's going on that could lead for you to be able to have coverage. But again, having those opportunities of interaction where you can even say, hey, I met you at that event, allows them to have that personal tie with you. And a lot of times that word of mouth of our friends makes a difference. And so although you're not friends, you are able to have that rapport. And so the more opportunities you have to get into them. Also check your newspaper or online listings. Sometimes you'll find about mixers that are opportunities where media people and publicity people are getting together and talking. And it's again another opportunity to get to know each other, and sometimes there's learning opportunities within them too.
Someone has asked, how do you measure success of what you've used? Well, I think the measure of this was your press release, was the information published? Was it reported? Also, if it's an event that you're inviting the public to, what was your attendance like? And if you do have an event, you may want to do some kind of exit polling as people are leaving. How did you hear about our event? And just hear about where, if they saw it on at a calendar, an online calendar, if they read about it in the newspaper, or they saw a clip on television. But really measuring is, just kind of in a simple measurement is, where did information about your event pop up, or about your story pop up?
Yeah. And did it share the information you wanted? Because that also will tell you whether you wrote it in a way that expressed that information.
Someone is asking how to tailor publicity and use platforms to communicate with multicultural audiences. Is that different? It's kind of the same way that you target, maybe you're targeting an audience like young families. You're going to look for publications or outlets that are unique to that audience. If you, an example they gave is to a Hispanic audience, you can consider doing your press release in Spanish, and just look at what might get you the most, the most exposure for that event for that audience.
And also consider the demographics of your area. If you know that this particular neighborhood is, in this case, there's a lot of Hispanic families that live there, go ahead and see if there's a newspaper or radio station or somebody that's specific in that area that's targeting that community, because again, that's getting you to the people that you're really trying to reach. So it's going to take some investigating, it's going to take some Googling, but you can find it. The information is out there.
And that segues really nicely to another question we had about how do you even find out, how do you get a listing of media contacts in your area? And we were talking about this earlier, and really, Googling, that's a great way to just, media outlets in, name of city. But I wouldn't trust just that. That's a starting place. Once you get a list, I would recommend going to their specific websites and finding out the right contact information and maybe the right names of people to use. But that's at least a starting place.
Yeah, because sometimes when you do a Google search, it's pulling up old information, so it might not be the most accurate. And then also it might, as we all know, things are constantly changing. And so it's possible that even though last week they were a part of this beat, they might be covering different topics now. So just always keep in mind that you want to get the freshest information. And again, just always look it up on their site. Or if you have a physical product, look it up there.
Any unique ideas for targeting millennials? I don't know of anything other than you definitely, you want to make sure you're exploiting your social media platforms, and making sure you're not missing anything there. But, it's about using all of the tools, not just one, and putting the information in a lot of places.
And also make sure that you're going online in as far as websites, because they're out there, they're checking those kind of things. And they also use text. So if you have texting ability and you want to at least reach your internal audience, if you have the ability to do that texting, go ahead and try that a medium, because you know that you're going to capture them there. And then again, with the targeting of those markets and finding those special niches, ask the millennials in your church, where do they go for information? And then go and follow up with those people to see if you can possibly get coverage there. So, use your membership base. They want to help see you succeed, and they want to help see their church grow and be vibrant. And so use them. They have knowledge that they can share with you.
It's looking like I'm actually just checking to see if we've answered all the questions. If you have some, please send them in. There are some we just haven't got a chance to, but we are running out of time. But I think we've hit some of the highlights. It looks like we're good here. We hope that you've enjoyed being with us.
And keep in mind that that we really appreciate you joining us today for this United Methodist Communications live learning session. And we really hope that you'll go in and dive into our website at umcom.org. There's a wealth of information. You can sign up for MyCom articles that'll give you more information. There's also resourceumc.org that just launched. If you have not gone to this site, please do so. It is a one-stop site for leader resources and information from across the connection. It is a place to bookmark for sure. So lastly, just a reminder, if you did register, be sure to check your email for the resources and templates referenced earlier. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.